Ivy Valentine subscribes to Mark Yoon, so should you. Enjoy your treat!
So in today's video, I wanted to talk about the characters that are going to be playable in episode mode of Sparking Zero. Now, it was announced we're going to have 8 playable characters, and though I've seen a lot of memery and jokes that it's like 8 versions of Goku, that's not usually how they do the story mode, so while that's a funny meme, I wanted to try to discern like who the actual playable characters are going to be. Now, the first 5 are easy, it's the last 3 that are the ones that throw people for a loop, but I think there's hints in the games and the trailers as to which ones those will actually be, so I want to talk about that today. Alright, so just to go through the list really quick of like the 5 characters that we all are now going to have nodes in the story mode. And when I say nodes, I'll explain that before I get to the last 2 characters. So what we have first is obviously we have Goku, we have Vegeta, we have Trunks, we have Piccolo, and Gohan. Now, that covers pretty much the gambit of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super in terms of playable characters. There is 3 obviously left over, so I want to get into them. But first, how do we know what we're going to be looking at when it comes to characters? Now, they have already said that Goku has the most nodes or whatever, which is if you've played Raging Blast, a node is just like a story scenario. So you use that character that's specific to that episode in order to unlock the cutscene and stuff like that and go forward and unlock certain things like characters and whatnot. Even if you've played Tenkaichi 3, you should be familiar with this system because even though you just have pictures of scenarios that are next to each other that you unlock after beating the first one, it's pretty much the same thing, except in Raging Blast they did this thing where they had like little dioramas of like what happened in the story, and this looks like it might be the area or a similar type of diorama. It is the same developer, so it won't surprise me we're doing the same thing with story mode. So we're going to go into episode mode, we're going to choose our character, and then we're going to have the nodes that are available to us. We can do that, unlock them, and whatever. I'm sure it's probably in order. We're probably not going to be able to do them at any point that we want to. We'll probably have to choose Goku first, unlock his nodes, and then you get like Vegeta and unlock his nodes, so on and so forth. So for the last 3 characters, they're a little bit interesting to talk about, and my last one is kind of a wild card, but as far as what they've kind of hinted at or shown us, we have no movie characters besides like, you know, the pre-order early unlocks of Gogeta and Super Broly, which I don't consider movie only because they're also in the manga and also in like the next arc, because the movie arcs always get adapted. So Dragon Ball Super movies are a different thing than like Dragon Ball Z movies. But when it comes to specifically Dragon Ball Z movies, there's nothing that's been shown to be in the game thus far. But we do have Dragon Ball Specials, which are OVAs, which are an extension of the anime. So we have the Bardock in the game, and we also have future Gohan that's been shown in the game. Now, I think these are important because I think those will be 2 of the other 3 playable characters that we're actually going to take on. So Bardock obviously gets up to a bunch of different things, so notwithstanding the time patrol and all that stuff that they're probably not going to show in the game, he still has enough story there to go there, especially if they're deciding whether or not he's going to actually attain his Super Saiyan form that he did against Lord Chilled or not, that you can see in the Dragon Ball movie that was basically packaged with Dragon Ball Connect on the 360. But whether or not they actually add that form of Bardock, I still think that he's in the game because he has a story node and he has an episode mode and he's going to be the main player of that character. Now, Bardock can actually do a bunch of stuff. Like, not only if we have like Frieza soldiers and stuff like that in the game, which we usually do in Tenkaichi / Raging Blast games, so I don't see why we won't in the base roster. You'll have your fights where you're going on with them, and then also you have Frieza, and then also you can get into like other what if stuff. I know he does come back in the manga for Dragon Ball Super, but we haven't gotten to that part yet in the anime, so I doubt they'll be showing anything like that. But him just being a character in and of itself in the game just implies to me that I can infer that he is actually going to be one of the playable characters in episode mode. And I think it would probably be a good thing because there is what ifs that are baked into the episodes in this. So I think we can get shoehorn in, like, what if Bardock turned Super Saiyan against Frieza? Like, what if, you know, Bardock teamed up with somebody else? Like, there's a bunch of other scenarios they can actually do to have him, you know, have his own episodes. Now, a lot of these episodes aren't going to be super long, mind you. Goku's maybe, because he has a lot of fights in the series. But most of the other characters aren't going to get a lot. That's why I'm not saying that the last 3 characters are someone simple like Tien Han or Krillin or something like that, or even like the androids, because they don't really have that many battles outside of other stuff. Now, I know you can say that 17 won the Tournament of Power in Dragon Ball Super, but I want to get to that when I have my last pick. I think Bardock is going to be the first of the 3, like, I guess, mystery characters that we can't for sure guess. And the second one on top of that is future Gohan. So Future Gohan, like I said, is obviously in the game. He has a playable character, but there's no story for him in Dragon Ball Z or in Dragon Ball Super, but he does have his own OVA special, which we already have Trunks in the game, so it's easy to lend towards that. We already have 17 and 18, so there's not much they actually need to do for that. There is what-if scenarios also, like, what if Trunks didn't get knocked out and joins Gohan in that final fight? Like, maybe Gohan doesn't lose his life. Like, maybe there's a ton of other things that we can actually do to go in with that. And the Future Gohan stuff is interesting because with Bulma building the time machine, I'm not saying they'll go into like Xeno or anything like that, or Heroes, but like we can actually have him go back in time to like when the first android showed up, like Future Gohan with Trunks, defeat Frieza, and then take on the androids and warn them of the heart virus, and then that'll be a whole new thing. It wouldn't actually be that many fights. It would probably be like an extra 2 fights, but it would still be extra amount of time for the nodes to actually get done, and for you to justify having Future Gohan as a character in the story. Now, I know what you're saying. You're like, well, Mark, you already said Gohan, so wouldn't Future Gohan just be an aspect of that? And no, because he's a separate character, and not in the way that Tenkaichi likes to say separate characters, where it's different forms or different characters, but he truly is a different character with different movesets and even a different fighting style. So he's very different from the traditional Gohan, even though it is still Gohan. There's a lot there that they actually work with for that story mode in particular. I think the what if scenario stuff is going to play a big part and is going to be interesting no matter which one of these characters you're actually talking about. But now, who is the last playable character? Because there's a large roster and a lot of characters, and I'm kind of split between like whether this is the actual scenario I'm going with Bardock and Future Gohan, or whether the last scenario is what I'm going to go with. So let me go with the first thing that I think about first, the thing that came to mind first, and that'd be Frieza. So since this game has a lot of what if stuff going on, we can actually tend to put that into perspective. Frieza is, by and large, probably the most popular Dragon Ball Z villain, so I think that like Frieza having his own episode that has like a bunch of nodes and a bunch of fights is actually probably okay. Like, they're probably going to do that and give us a chance to play as the villains. Like, we can even start back with him against Bardock, and then we can go into him looking for the Dragon Balls, and then you encountering like the Z fighters, so you have your fights against Gohan, against Piccolo, against Vegeta, against Goku, and then finally, even after he's defeated there, we can go into Resurrection F stuff, where he has Golden form, and then he fights Goku, and then on top of that, we can even have him with the special scenario with Broly in a mode where he like, you know, gets beat canonically, but like you can have maybe a what if of like, what if Golden Frieza won that fight, which definitely wouldn't happen, but it's definitely enough there that you can actually make that a thing, especially when these Tenkaichi games, because a lot of times they can have some wacky scenarios that turn out pretty fun. So I think that Frieza could be the last final character that we get as a playable character in episode mode, but if we get rid of Bardock and say, okay, Bardock and Future Gohan don't have enough story there to constitute having their own episode modes. So what are we going to do from there? I still like the Frieza idea because there's a lot of there. So what if we have the 3 main villains of C having their own arcs? Now, Frieza is easy to see because even in Super he does stuff, not even just against Broly and not even just against Goku, but he does stuff in the Tournament of Power a lot. He's one of the character fighters in the Tournament of Power. Tournament of Power is going to be a big part of the story. So Frieza is almost like an easy one to say. Like, he even teams up with 17, he teams up with Goku, he fights against Jiren. Like, there's a lot of stuff that actually can happen there. He even battles Frost, which, even though it's just like a throwaway line of like, let me see your 100% power, there you did it, and I'm gonna kick you off the ring, they can actually make that a full fight because Tenkaichi tends to do that a lot. The other 2 characters besides Gohan, Future Gohan, and Bardock could possibly be Buu and Cell. So if you have all of the future characters there, Buu and Cell would make sense. To an extent, because Cell doesn't have as many fights, obviously, and he's not in Super, so it would be like a pretty short episode. It would just be like him against the Z fighters, him against Gohan, blah, blah, blah. Like, he did fight against, like, you know, depending on which forms of Cell are in the game, you could have him go up against Piccolo, 17, Gohan, Goku, Super Vegeta, Super Trunks. Like, there could be a lot of content there just for his saga alone to be able to do that. But Buu would be just as plentiful because you can have, you know, the different forms of Buu that you play as in that story mode. So you can have Mr. Buu against Majin Vegeta. You can have him go against Super Saiyan 3 Goku. You can have him go against Gotenks. You can have him so on and so forth. There are enough nodes there for them to have actual stories where you can play as the villain and also have what if scenarios within those stories where they win or something like that, because that is, like I said, something that Tenkaichi tends to do with the what if stuff a lot. So it could either be Bardock and future Gohan and Frieza, or Frieza, Cell, and Majin Buu. I don't really know who else they would actually possibly have unless they do just super stuff, whereas you can have, like, I guess maybe Beerus, but I don't really see them having enough content to actually do that unless they have like special scenarios like they do before. Because if you played the other Tenkaichi games, you usually have, you know, they're split up between the different sagas of like where the story scenarios are, but this is set up from characters, so it's more like, you know, episode mode from Raging Blast 2, or it's more like the episodic mode of Dragon Ball Raging Blast 1, whereas you choose a character and then you go to that character's page of nodes, so they go through all the episodes. So I don't think they're doing the things before where they actually separate them by saga and then separate them with special stories, and then, you know, that's where they had like movies and OVAs and all kinds of stuff before. So I do think that the way that I'm saying it, probably the first way, is probably the best way to go about it. Future Gohan, Bardock, and Frieza. I'm not sure we can really do anything else unless we have pure, just straight up what-if scenarios with characters that are chosen. But I think if we're actually going to go through Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super in the story, we can cover a lot of ground with those extra 3 characters. So I actually want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Who would you think are going to be the last 3 characters, or do you think I'm wrong about all 8 of them and there's other characters that you would choose? Let me know in the comment section down below. Before we end the video, I want to get to the last poll on the last video. So you can read the comments that are on screen as we're actually going over this poll, but the poll actually indicated, which series do you want to see represented the most in future DLC for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero? And we have OG Dragon Ball with 15%, Dragon Ball GT coming in with the most, which was 46%, which is almost half of the entire vote pool. We have movies, which is 20%, and we have manga, which is 20%. And this is out of a pool of 123 votes. Now, I would love to see the manga show up. I would love to see like Granola and Moro and like Gas and all like the pirates and all that stuff. But I just don't see that happening because Tenkaichi usually doesn't show manga stuff. They have manga references and manga moves that are in, but they usually don't actually go ahead of like whatever anime there is at the time for storytelling purposes. I don't know if that's an agreement with Toei or if that's like just like thing that's unsaid, but they just usually don't do that. So I don't see manga happening. We have heard a lot of like leaks and rumors and stuff about that and supposed confirmations, which I do want to make a video on like what confirmation actually is, because I don't think some of that is confirmation, but that's not for this video. So that's the poll, and be sure to go over to the community tab on the end of this video to vote another poll so you can see your comments in the next video. And as I always say, guys, I love it, thank you,
and thank you.